There's a lot to unpack today, Bengals fans, and this one might surprise you. The Cincinnati Bengals just made a sneaky, under-the-radar signing that could quietly help them in a big way down the stretch. It's been a wild couple of weeks, new faces coming in, players getting shuffled around, and now, there's even a major update about Joe Burrow that's got the fan base buzzing. Before we dive into the latest Bengals moves, make sure you subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the latest Bengals updates. Alright, let's get into it. The Bengals have officially elevated Brian Asamoa to the active roster, while also signing Antoine Powell to the practice squad. And honestly, this move deserves some attention. With Joe Burrow's status still uncertain and every game carrying playoff weight, Cincinnati knows it needs help on the defensive side, especially at linebacker. Asamoa, a third-round pick back in 2022, brings speed and experience to a defense that's been struggling to stay consistent. He's not a star name, but he's got NFL representatives, 57 games, over 30 tackles, and a couple forced fumbles to his name. More importantly, he's young, hungry, and looking for a shot. Given how thin this Bengals defense has been and how many injuries they've battled, adding someone like Asamoa is a smart depth move. He might not change the season overnight, but he could be one of those quiet additions that ends up mattering when it counts most. You know what? This move actually makes sense. At this point in the season, you're not landing any Pro Bowl caliber players, those days are gone. But what you can do is find stability, and that's exactly what the Bengals are trying to build. This defense has been fighting uphill all year, missed tackles, miscommunication, blown assignments, and they lead the league in missed tackles. That tells you everything. So adding someone like Brian Asamoa might not grab headlines, but it gives the defense something they've been desperate for: reliability. The Bengals have already tried to go young. Guys like Shaka Hayward and Barrett Carter have shown flashes, but also the growing pains you expect from rookies. Now, by bringing in a player who's been around NFL speed, they're adding maturity to a group that's been inconsistent. And then there's Antoine Powell Ryland, the other name in this mix, a sixth-round pick with raw athleticism who's bounced around practice squads but still has potential. He's one of those players who might not be a big name now, but with the Bengals' track record of developing depth, he could turn into a valuable rotational piece down the line. This isn't about making a flashy move, it's about making a smart one. Cincinnati knows its defense can't afford another step backward, and if Asamoa or Powell can bring even a little bit of steadiness, that could quietly shift the tone heading into the next stretch of games. The injury situation in Cincinnati just keeps getting tougher. The Bengals' defense is hanging on by a thread right now, and the latest updates make things even worse. Reports out of practice confirm that Shamar Stewart will miss time with a knee injury suffered against the Bears. Coach Zac Taylor described him as week to week, which usually means the team is preparing to be without him for a while. And when you combine that with Trey Hendrickson likely missing this Sunday's divisional game, it's a brutal blow. This couldn't come at a worse time. Every divisional matchup, whether it's against Pittsburgh or Baltimore, carries massive playoff implications. You can't afford to lose your top pass rusher right when the defense is already fighting to find its rhythm. Stewart's injury raises even more concern because it happened right after the bye week. That's usually when guys get healthy, not sidelined. And Hendrickson's hip issue? That's the kind of injury that can linger all season long. Now, you're looking at a defense that's relying heavily on depth, Demetrius Knight, Barrett Carter, and DJ Turner being forced into bigger roles. Turner's been one of the few bright spots lately, but the rest of the unit has struggled to generate consistent pressure. This matchup with the Steelers suddenly feels like a test of resilience more than anything. On paper, it looks like the Bengals should be in trouble, but football isn't played on paper. If Cincinnati somehow pulls this off, it could be the kind of win that re-energizes the locker room and reminds everyone that this team still knows how to fight. It's hard to believe, the Steelers sitting at 3-0 in the division. That alone tells you how critical this matchup truly is for the Bengals. Every AFC North game feels like a playoff battle, but this one could define the rest of Cincinnati's season. The defense is clearly battered, depth is thin, and questions keep piling up heading into Sunday. That's the reality. But there's finally a bit of good news, and it's the kind Bengals fans have been waiting for. Head coach Zac Taylor spoke with the media today and said Joe Burrow looked sharp at practice, his words, not ours. Burrow was out there taking representatives, running the huddle with his fellow quarterbacks, looking calm and confident. And that, in itself, is huge. A few weeks ago, reports hinted that Burrow could return around Thanksgiving, possibly for that game against Baltimore. Then the timeline shifted, maybe later, maybe week 17. But now? The tone inside the organization feels different. They're not promising anything, but there's real optimism building. NFL insider Albert Bree even reported that Burrow's recovery is ahead of schedule, and the Bengals are carefully weighing how soon they can bring him back. They're not rushing it, but they know if this team can string together a couple of wins, the door to Burrow's return starts to open. If Cincinnati can knock off the Steelers and build momentum, it changes everything. Suddenly, the possibility of seeing number 9 back under center before the season ends isn't just a dream, it's real. And let's be honest, the energy in the locker room shifts the moment Burrow even steps on that practice field. His leadership, his fire, his calm, that's the heartbeat of this team. Whether he returns this month or later, one thing's clear, Joe Burrow is getting closer. And the Bengals aren't done fighting yet. This is it, the stretch that could define everything for the Cincinnati Bengals. Sunday's matchup isn't just another game, it's the most important one of the season. It's not only about playoff hopes, it's about whether Joe Burrow's return becomes a real possibility. As Albert Bree pointed out, Burrow's recovery is ahead of schedule, but the decision to bring him back won't just depend on health, it'll depend on winning. If the Bengals pull off a victory against the Steelers, the front office might feel confident enough to let Burrow push the envelope a bit. But if they stumble again, the tone shifts completely. The focus then becomes long-term health, long-term stability, because Joe Burrow is the franchise. He's the face of this team, the heartbeat of this city. There's no sense risking that future for a single game if the postseason slips away. Still, the what-ifs sting. What if Cincinnati had closed out one or two of those tight games earlier in the year? What if the defense had held strong just once more? The standings, and the entire conversation, could look completely different right now. But that's football. It's unpredictable, it's painful, and sometimes it's unfair. Yet somehow, the Bengals are still alive. They've taken hits, they've been counted out, and still, they're swinging. So here we are, battered, bruised, and still believing. If Cincinnati can rise up and beat Pittsburgh this week, everything changes. The playoff race tightens. The locker room reignites. And maybe, just maybe, we see Joe Burrow take the field again before this season ends. Because one thing's for sure, this team isn't ready to pack it in. Not yet. Not while there's still a fight to be had in Cincinnati.